Nano-UFOs. The nano-UFOs theory is the idea that some unidentified flying objects are not just large spacecraft, but they are actually extremely small machines, sometimes microscopic or just barely visible to the human eye. Now, these objects are described as advanced devices that can move intelligently, they can change direction instantly, and they operate in ways that normal technology can't. Instead of being the size of, massive planes or flying saucers, they are said to be as small as dust particles or even like little, grains of sand. The theory suggests that these nano-sized objects are used mainly for surveillance and data collection. They are believed to be capable of monitoring environments, of tracking people, or even scanning biological systems. Basically just gathering a bunch of information without being noticed. Now, because of their size, they could easily enter buildings or vehicles or even the human body. Now, some versions of the theory connect them to reports of tiny glowing dots or even those, little orbs that people say they see on like their Ring cameras or whatever. Supporters of the theory often describe these objects as highly advanced technology, possibly even using artificial intelligence. They are said to be able to fly without wings, they can make sharp turns fast, they can hover, and they can also just accelerate, super fast and super, instantly. Now, they are said to be able to fly without wings, they can make, super sharp turns, and they can even accelerate instantly. The theory claims they do not rely on normal fuel or propulsion and instead use unknown energy systems. Their small size is believed to make them harder to detect with radar or traditional sensors. So basically, the nano-UFOs theory proposes that some UFO activity comes from ultra-small intelligent flying machines designed for observation and control rather than transportation, and they operate quietly and invisibly alongside just everyday life. Like there could be one, flying above my face right now. The sky is a hologram. Now, this theory is the idea that what people see as the sky, including things such as the sun and the moon and, the stars and the planets and the clouds, is not, fully physical, but it's a projected or artificial display, similar to a hologram. Now, the theory suggests that the sky acts like a massive screen or visual layer placed over the Earth, creating the illusion of outer space and celestial movement rather than showing a true open universe. Now, in this theory, objects in the sky are not distant bodies, millions of miles away, but they are images or projections generated by an advanced system. The sun and the moon are often described as local light sources or projected images rather than these solid objects. Their movement across the sky is explained as part of a programmed display that repeats in predictable patterns, kind of like a, looping animation. Changes in the brightness or the size or even, the colors are seen as adjustments in the projection rather than, just natural space behavior. The theory also claims that the sky projection can malfunction or glitch. Now, people point to things like strange cloud shapes, sudden changes in the sky's appearance, stars that seem to move or flicker oddly, or unusual light patterns as signs of the hologram adjusting or refreshing. Some versions say that this system can hide things beyond the sky, it can limit what humans can see, or it can control how reality is perceived. The theory says that the sky is not a true window into space, but it's a controlled visual display designed to shape how people understand the world above them. All conspiracies are true. Now, this is the idea that every conspiracy theory, no matter how different or contradictory, contains real truth and is part of a much larger hidden system. Now, instead of seeing conspiracies as separate or competing ideas, this theory treats them as pieces to just one massive puzzle. Now, each conspiracy explains a small part of reality, and together they form a complete picture of how the world actually works behind the scenes. This theory says that powerful groups secretly control governments and science and media and history and technology and even human behavior. Different conspiracy theories are seen as describing different layers of this control. For example, one theory might focus on secret governments, another on, hidden technology, another on mind control, and another on rewritten history. Now, even if they seem to conflict, this theory assumes that the contradictions are intentional or caused by limited human understanding. Now, a key idea is that misinformation exists not to hide the truth completely, but to overwhelm people with too many versions of it. By flooding the public with conflicting stories, people get confused and divided, or they just dismiss everything as, complete and utter nonsense. The theory argues that official explanations are false by default, and alternative explanations are closer to reality than what is publicly accepted. So the all conspiracy, theories are true basically just says that the world people see is a carefully managed illusion, and that every conspiracy theory is a clue pointing toward a hidden system of control that operates, beyond just normal awareness. The empty internet theory. Now, the empty internet theory is the idea that most of the internet is no longer made up of real people, but instead is filled with bots, automated systems, artificial intelligence, and recycled content. It suggests that while the internet looks busy, obviously it's full of posts and comments and likes and videos and YouTube videos and conversations, much of that activity is generated artificially rather than by humans. Real people are believed to make up only a small portion of online interaction, and the theory says that this shift happened gradually as companies and governments and even platforms began using automation to drive engagement, to control narratives, to sell products, and to keep, these sites active. Bots are believed to write posts, to comment on videos, to, argue with each other, and to even boost trends and just to, simulate public opinion. Algorithms can reuse and remix old content, making it seem new, while AI-generated text, images, and videos flood platforms to fill space and maintain the illusion of constant activity. Now, another part of the theory is that real human interaction has been buried under the automated layer. Genuine posts are harder to find because they are drowned out by, mass-produced content designed to maximize clicks and attention. The internet is described as a giant echo chamber where bots talk to bots, they then amplify each other, and then they create fake popularity, fake outrage, and even fake consensus. So simply, the theory just says that the internet looks alive, but underneath the surface, it is mostly, hollow, and it is run by machines that imitate human behavior, while real people become less visible and less, influential online. Like, one thing I've seen recently on Instagram is like videos that were made by real people, but then someone or a system creates an AI person over that video, and it looks, so real. Like, I've seen so many videos and it's like, wait, that video seems so familiar, and it's because it's literally just an artificial human being plastered on a real human, and then that's their video. And then you scroll through the comments and it's just a bunch of 50-year-olds and they're all just like, oh yeah, oh, looks good, oh, nice dance. And it's like, did no one realize that was a robot? But it's I predict very soon that every video you see on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook or whatever is that it's all going to be fake people. There's going to be no real people anymore. It's just going to be these AI characters that are going to be the influencers or the content creators, and it's all of us are just going to get pushed out because we can't compete with a bot that can generate 1,000 videos a day. There's no possible way that I could make 1,000 videos a day. I'm also going to prove to you guys real quick that I'm real. Okay, I'm real. I'm not an AI bot. Okay, I actually really have no clue how to prove that I'm a real human, but I guess you guys are just gonna have to take my word for it. I don't know, did that seem real? Did seem real? Shit, maybe I am a bot. Fuck. The Soviet skin sight theory. So the Soviet skin sight theory, also known as the dermal vision theory, is the idea that humans can perceive visual information through their skin instead of their eyes. Now, according to the theory, the skin can detect things like colors and shapes and symbols and even written letters. and then it sends that information to the brain in a way similar to, our normal sight does. Now, this ability is said to work even when a person's eyes are completely covered, meaning that your vision is not involved at all. Now, the theory was developed and studied mainly in the Soviet Union during the early to mid 1900s. Now, Soviet researchers reported cases where people, and these were often children, could correctly identify colored cards, trace lines, or recognize shapes using their fingers, their palms, or just, other parts of their skin. Now, in these studies, these subjects were usually blindfolded, and the visual material was placed so it could only be touched or hovered over, not, seen with their eyes. Supporters believed that the skin itself was somehow sensing visual information. Now, according to the theory, this ability does not come from normal touch or heat or pressure. Instead, it suggests that the skin has special sensitivity to light or visual patterns. Some versions of the theory claim that the nervous system can adapt and learn to process these signals, meaning that skin sight could be trained and improved over time. Training methods were said to help the brain translate skin sensations into images, colors, or symbols that the person could then understand. Google Earth black zones. Now, the Google Earth black zones theory is the idea that certain areas on Google Earth are intentionally hidden, blurred, pixelated, or blacked out to conceal important locations or information from the public. These black zones appear as missing imagery, low-resolution patches, solid colors, or just sudden distortions that stand out from the surrounding map data. The theory treats these areas as places that are deliberately kept off limits visually, and not because of the technical limits, but because they contain something meant to stay hidden. The theory claims that these black zones cover sensitive or secret locations such as, underground bases, advanced technology sites, hidden cities, ancient ruins, or even just restricted experiments. Some versions also include places that are supposedly not meant to be known at all, like entrances to underground systems, to non-public structures, or even areas that don't fit or match accepted geography. The uneven way these zones appear, sometimes in remote regions, sometimes near populated areas, are seen as intentional rather than random. Now, another part of the theory is that these black zones act like digital censorship. Even though satellites can, image nearly every single part of Earth, the data shown to the public is filtered. The theory suggests that when something exists that challenges official narratives about history or science or even geopolitics, it is removed or obscured before being displayed. The black zones are seen as visual, do not look there, types of things that are just built into mapping systems. The Google Black Zone theory says that the world that people see on digital maps is incomplete by design, and that the missing or blacked out areas point to locations that are intentionally hidden from public view. The third hemisphere of the brain. This theory is the idea that the human brain has an additional hidden hemisphere beyond the well-known left and right hemispheres. While your left hemisphere is usually linked to, logic and language, and the right hemisphere to creativity and emotion, this theory claims that there is a third mental system that is inactive, suppressed, or inaccessible in most people. This third hemisphere is believed to handle higher awareness, deeper perception, and advanced mental abilities. The theory describes this third hemisphere as responsible for intuition, for heightened perception, and understanding reality beyond normal senses. It is often associated with abilities like seeing patterns that others miss, with sensing hidden connections, with understanding complex ideas instantly, or even just experiencing reality in a non-linear way. Some versions connect it to the subconscious or unconscious mind, while others describe it as a separate mental layer that integrates thought and emotion, memory, and even awareness into a single, unified experience. Another key idea is that this third hemisphere is dormant due to education systems, social conditioning, or even just neurological limits placed on, human development. The theory claims that it can be activated through mental thinking, through meditation, through altered states of consciousness, or even deep introspection. Now, once activated, the brain is said to function more holistically and no longer split between logic and emotion, but operating as a fully integrated system. So this theory just says that humans are only using part of their mental potential and that a hidden part of the brain exists that allows for expanded awareness and deeper understanding and a more complete way of thinking when it is accessed. Like shit, maybe we were all, maybe we all had a chip implanted in our mind when we were born, and that chip doesn't let us access, our third hemisphere. Ooh, there's another little theory tied to it. The Antarctic Staircase. Now, the Antarctic Staircase theory is the idea that Antarctica is not just a frozen continent, but a layered or tiered structure that leads downward into deeper levels of the Earth. Now, instead of being flat land covered in ice, Antarctica is described as having massive step-like formations that descend beneath the surface. Each level is believed to lead to different hidden regions that are not accessible to the public. In this theory, the ice covering Antarctica hides entrances to these lower levels. These staircases are said to be enormous, and they're not just like these normal steps, but they are vast drops or terraces carved naturally or even artificially. These layers are believed to extend far below the surface, possibly reaching underground worlds, ancient structures, or inner realms of the Earth. Antarctica's extreme weather and restricted access are seen as reasons that these areas remain unseen. Now, another key part of this theory is that each level of the staircase represents a different environment. Some versions describe warmer regions beneath the ice, underground oceans, or even advanced civilizations that exist below the surface. Others suggest that these staircases act as a transition system between the surface world and deeper layers of reality, and this is where physical rules, may change. So basically, the theory just says that Antarctica is a gateway and it's not an endpoint, and that there is a massive hidden descent beneath the Earth's surface, structured like a staircase that leads to concealed worlds far below the ice. Nothing outside your vision exists. Now, this is the idea that reality only exists where it is being directly perceived. Anything outside of a person's vision, stuff that's behind them or super far away or not being observed at that moment, does not exist in a meaningful way until it, enters awareness. Reality is treated as something that is constantly generated in real time based on observation, rather than something that fully exists everywhere all at once. So in this theory, the world is not permanent or continuous beyond perception. Objects and people and places and events only become real when they are seen, heard, or, otherwise sensed. When attention moves away, those things stop existing or return to an undefined state. The brain is viewed as actively creating reality frame by frame, similar to how a video game, only renders what the player sees. The theory also applies to distance and scale. Faraway places and other rooms and even other people's lives are considered unreal or incomplete unless being directly observed. Maps and memories and assumptions fill in those gaps, but those are mental placeholders rather than proof of existence. Reality is local and it's, immediate, and it's centered entirely around the observer's point of view. So in simple terms, this theory is just saying that the universe only exists where awareness is focused, and everything beyond perception is either unfinished, inactive, or non-existent until it is directly experienced. Lost Boy Larry. Now, the Lost Boy Larry theory is the idea that a boy named Larry disappeared in the past but never actually died or was, found. Instead, he is believed to be stuck in a hidden or altered state of reality that overlaps with the normal world. Now, the theory treats Larry not just as a missing person, but as someone who's slipped into a space between places, neither fully gone nor fully present, if that makes sense. In this theory, Larry exists in gaps of reality such as abandoned areas and quiet neighborhoods at night and forests and empty buildings, or moments when no one is paying attention. People might briefly see him or hear footsteps or feel like somebody's nearby, but never clearly enough to confirm anything. These sightings are described as short and unclear and easy to dismiss, which is why Larry is never fully noticed or never helped. Now, another part of this theory is that Larry cannot age, escape, or interact normally. He is stuck repeating the same state of being lost, unable to cross back into normal life. Time does not move for him the way that it does for everyone else. He remains a child because the moment he disappeared never truly ended for him. So this theory just says that a missing child became trapped in a hidden layer of reality, and he is still present in small, unnoticed ways. And he's forever lost, not in location, but between existence and non-existence. Which actually correlates into our next theory, which is the Forest of Lost Children. And the Forest of the Lost Children theory is the idea that there exists a hidden or overlapping forested space where children who go missing end up instead of going, or instead of disappearing completely. Now, this forest is not a normal physical place that can be found on a map, but it's a separate layer of reality that overlaps with real forests and parks and, wilderness areas. Children enter it by accident when they wander off, when they, get lost, or when they just pass through the wrong place at the wrong time. So the forest exists outside of normal time and space. And once inside, children do not age, and time kind of slows down, or it loops, or it just, stops altogether. They are unable to find their way back because the paths change and, landmarks repeat, and the forest suddenly redirects them deeper inside. So the reason why we're talking about, the Lost Boy Larry theory than this theory, because it's like, if this Lost Boy Larry story is 100% true and this kid did go missing and people have reported, feeling him or sensing him, just like around the town or whatever, shit, he really could be stuck in a different reality with, hundreds upon thousands upon millions of lost children who are also stuck in this reality. And not even children. It could just be missing people. Maybe people that just wandered off from home somehow got stuck in this reality. So that's kind of why we talked about these two theories back to back. So I hope you guys didn't hear the Lost Boy Larry theory and thought I was just bullshitting or making some shit up. But that's why we're talking about him. Earth is the only true planet. Now, the Earth is the only true planet theory is the idea that Earth is the only real physical planet that exists. And all of the other planets shown in astronomy, like places like Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, they're not actual worlds in outer space. Instead, they are believed to be lights, projections, reflections, or constructed images shown in the sky or through technology. The theory claims that Earth is unique, enclosed, and fundamentally different from, everything else that people are told that exists in space. The theory says that what people call planets are not solid places that, can be traveled to, but they are just these visual objects that appear in the sky for just, observation. Telescopes and satellites and space images are said to show enhanced or artificial visuals rather than real destinations. Space itself is often described as not being a vast open universe, but a limited or contained system where Earth sits at the center. Another core idea is that Earth operates under different rules than the rest of what is described in astronomy. Earth is seen as a complete, self-contained system capable of supporting life, weather, and time, while these other planets do not share these qualities because they are not actual worlds. Their purpose is often described as symbolic, decorative, or, informational rather than physical. The Earth is the only true planet theory just says that Earth is the only real world that exists, and everything else labeled as a planet is not a place that you could ever go to, but it's a part of a constructed cosmic display meant to shape how people understand reality. The Devil's Tower root system. The Devil's Tower root system theory is the idea that Devil's Tower in Wyoming is not a standalone rock formation, but it's the exposed top of a much larger structure that extends deep underground. Instead of just being, a tall stone pillar, the tower is believed to be connected to a massive root-like system beneath the earth, similar to kind of like how a, tree trunk connects to its roots. In this theory, the vertical columns seen on Devil's Tower are not just surface features, but are a part of a much bigger structure that is buried beneath the ground. These underground roots are imagined as enormous stone formations spreading outward and downward for miles. Some versions describe them as branching tunnels or solid stone extensions that anchor the tower deep into the earth, making it far larger than what is visible above ground. The theory often treats Devil's Tower as a natural or artificial pillar rising from an underground network. The root system is believed to connect to other hidden geological structures, to other, underground chambers, or even ancient systems beneath the continent. The unusual shape of the tower, it being, straight vertical columns and just like this flat top, it's kind of seen as evidence that it's only the exposed portion of something that is much larger. So the Devil's Tower root system theory just says that Devil's Tower is just the visible tip of a massive underground structure with enormous stone roots hidden beneath the surface that make it far more, extensive than it appears. And it's like there could be so much stuff that is hidden inside of that system, or there could be, a whole nother world in that system. 9/11 happens every year. Now, the 9/11 happens every year theory is the idea that events similar in purpose and structure to the September 11th attacks occur repeatedly every year, but in less obvious or less public ways. Now, the theory treats 9/11 not as a single historical event, but as a template or pattern that is reused over and over again. The original event is seen as the most visible example, while later versions are believed to be hidden in plain sight. This theory focuses on patterns such as symbolic dates, repeated numbers, coordinated crises, sudden disasters, major political shifts, or even shocking events that just create, a shit ton of fear and confusion. These yearly 9/11s do not have to involve, planes or buildings. They can include financial crashes and wars and, terror incidents or even pandemics or infrastructure failures. The common thread is that each event creates shock, emotional stress, and a reason for increased control or change. Another key idea is the normalization. The first 9/11 was dramatic and unforgettable, but repeating similar events in smaller or different forms trains the public to accept emergency conditions as routine or as normal. And because of that, fear becomes routine. And people become more willing to accept surveillance or restrictions or even just these major political decisions without anybody really batting an eye. Now, over time, the yearly repetition is believed to condition society into constant alertness and dependence on authority. So the theory basically is just saying that the original, 9/11 event was not unique, but it was the start of a repeating cycle where controlled crises are used again and again to shape public behavior, to shape policy, or just to shape, perception on a regular basis. Psychotropic warfare. Now, the psychotropic warfare theory is the idea that governments or military organizations can influence, control, or manipulate human thoughts, emotions, behavior, or perception using psychological and mind-altering methods instead of traditional weapons. Now, according to the theory, the human mind itself becomes, basically the battlefield. And the goal is not to physically destroy an enemy, but to weaken or to confuse or to influence or to control people mentally so that they can act in ways that benefit the attacker. The theory claims that this kind of warfare uses psychological tools such as propaganda, fear, stress, misinformation, and emotional manipulation combined with psychotropic influences, things that, affect how the brain works. Now, these influences are said to include drugs, chemicals, sound frequencies, electromagnetic signals, subliminal messages, or other stimuli designed to alter mood, thinking, memory, or even decision-making. The theory suggests that these methods can be applied to individuals or large populations. It says that prolonged exposure to these techniques could change how people think, what they believe, and how they behave without, the person even realizing it. Effects described in the theory include confusion and anxiety and loss of motivation and false beliefs and even emotional instability or increased obedience. Now, in military or political contexts, the theory says that this could be used to reduce resistance, to control public opinion, to, disrupt any leadership or destabilize societies from the inside. So basically, the theory just claims that instead of fighting wars with guns and bombs and nukes, powerful groups could fight wars by targeting the human mind, shaping thoughts, emotions, and behavior as a strategic weapon. God's last wish. The God's last wish theory is the idea that God created the universe, life, and humanity with one final intention, and then he just stepped away completely. The theory says that after creation was finished, God no longer intervenes, communicates, judges, or guides events. Everything that happens now unfolds without divine control, without direction, or without correction, because creation itself was God's last and final act. In this theory, the last wish is usually described as complete freedom for existence to unfold on its own. Humans are meant to live, to choose, to suffer, to create, and even to destroy without anything, interfering. Nature runs on fixed rules, history moves forward on its own, and meaning is something that humans must figure out themselves. God is not watching or rewarding or punishing or responding to prayer, because doing so would break that final wish of independence. The theory often presents reality as a closed system that was set in motion and then just left alone. Life and consciousness and morality and civilization are all part of a long experiment where outcomes are not controlled or corrected. Any sense of divine presence, purpose, or destiny comes from human interpretation rather than direct guidance. So the theory is just saying that the universe exists because God wanted creation to experience reality on its own without supervision, and that, this freedom, no matter how chaotic or painful, is the final intention behind existence. The Smithsonian data breach. The Smithsonian data breach theory is the belief that the Smithsonian Institution secretly lost control of, leaked, or intentionally released hidden information that it was storing away from the public. The idea centers on the claim that the Smithsonian possesses vast archives of historical, archaeological, and scientific data that challenge accepted versions of human history, including evidence of advanced ancient civilizations, giant humans, lost technologies, or rewritten timelines. The theory says that this information was never meant to be public. Supporters believe that the data breach was not necessarily a modern computer hack, but rather a gradual or partial exposure of suppressed knowledge. This could have happened through leaked documents, through missing artifacts, even, insider whistleblowers, or just researchers publishing information that contradicts official history. The theory often connects this breach to the sudden appearance of controversial discoveries online, in independent books, or in alternative history communities that claim that their information traces back to restricted Smithsonian collections. A major part of the theory focuses on the Smithsonian's control over artifacts. It claims that certain items were removed from public view, they were either, miscatalogued or destroyed or even hidden in storage because they did not fit mainstream historical models. The breach idea suggests that once some of this information escaped control, it exposed inconsistencies in established narratives about human origins and technological development and even ancient cultures. So the theory just claims that a powerful institution long guarded knowledge that could change how people understand history, and that pieces, of this hidden information eventually leaked out, whether this was intentionally or not, and it revealed a version of the past that differs from, what we are taught today. Time began with the atomic bomb. This theory says that real continuous time did not exist before the first atomic bomb detonation, and that everything before it was either compressed, reconstructed, or fundamentally different from the time that is experienced now. The theory places the beginning of true time at the moment of the first nuclear explosion, viewing it as, a physical and reality-altering event that changed how the universe operates. In this theory, the atomic bomb did more than just release energy. It altered the structure of reality itself. By splitting atoms, humans interfered with the most basic level of matter, which is believed to have triggered time as a measurable, linear process. Before this moment, existence is described as static and looping and symbolic, or even timeless, where events happened but not, progress in the same forward-moving way that people experience now. The theory also suggests that memory, history, and recorded events from before the atomic bomb are part of a constructed past that only appears continuous. History feels long and detailed, but time itself only truly began once atomic energy was released. From that point forward, cause and effect became locked into a strict sequence. Aging accelerated, and the sense of irreversible time became dominant. The theory basically just says that the modern experience of time, the constant motion forward with no reset, started when humans split the atom, turning existence from a timeless state into a progressing timeline. The Mariana Trench Bone Pit. Now, this theory is the idea that the deepest part of the ocean, the Mariana Trench, contains an enormous accumulation of bones or skeletal remains at its bottom. Now, these bones are believed to come from unknown or ancient life forms far larger or different from, modern ocean animals. The trench is viewed not just as a deep crack in the earth, but as a final collection point where massive biological remains have settled over immense spans of time. In this theory, the extreme depth and pressure of the trench allow it to act like a natural trap. Anything that dies in the ocean, especially very large organisms, are believed to eventually sink and slide toward the deepest point where it all accumulates. Over time, this creates a dense layer of bones and fossils and remains that are never disturbed because of the darkness, the pressure, and the inaccessibility of the trench. Some versions of the theory suggest that the bones belong to ancient ocean creatures that no longer exist, possibly predating, known marine life. Others claim that they could be remains of unknown megafauna or even surface creatures that somehow ended up in the ocean. The trench's depth is believed to preserve these remains while keeping them hidden from exploration and observation. So this theory is just saying that the deepest place on Earth is not just, empty ocean floor, but it's a massive graveyard of biological remains collecting the bones of unknown and ancient life, far below the surface of the world. And it's like we have no clue what could be down there. And there could be some pretty, wild shit down there. If I just had to guess. The Neanderthal Shadow Government. Now, this theory is the idea that Neanderthals did not go extinct, but instead survived alongside modern humans and slowly integrated into human society while remaining hidden. Now, over time, they are believed to have formed a secret ruling group that operates behind the scenes, and they influence governments and institutions and global decisions without being publicly recognized. Now, in this theory, Neanderthals are described as physically different but mentally capable in ways that allow them to blend in or to conceal their true identity. They are often portrayed as having stronger instincts, higher tolerance for harsh conditions, and a more dominance-focused mindset. These traits are believed to make them, well suited for leadership and control and even long-term planning, even if they, remain out of the public eye. Now, the theory claims that this hidden group uses modern humans as a visible front while maintaining real power through political systems, through financial structures, through, military influence, and even intelligence networks. Some versions say that they selectively breed, hide their lineage, or operate through elite families to maintain influence across generations. Human history is described as being shaped quietly by this unseen group rather than by the leaders that people see publicly. So the theory just says that a surviving branch of ancient humans secretly, run part of the world, guiding events from these shadows while humanity believes that we are, governing ourselves, but it's really just a bunch of Neanderthals. Sick. The Manson Family Pit. The Manson Family Pit theory is the idea that the Manson family maintained or used a hidden underground pit or network of pits as part of their operations. Now, these pits are described as deep holes, caves, or even dugout chambers located in remote desert areas, especially around, old ranch land. The theory treats these pits as secret spaces separate from normal living areas, used for purposes not visible to outsiders. In this theory, the pits are believed to have been used for hiding people, for storing supplies, for isolating members, or even conducting secret rituals and planning. They are described as places where individuals could be kept out of sight, they could be controlled, or even just cut off from the outside world. Some versions suggest that the pits were used to reinforce obedience and fear, making members more dependent on leadership and the group structure. The theory often links these pits to desert locations where the group lived or traveled to, claiming that the isolation and harsh environment made it easier to hide underground spaces. The pit is sometimes described as symbolic as well as physical. A place representing separation from society, law, and normal reality. It is portrayed as a part of a larger hidden system that outsiders just never fully saw. So this theory says that the group used concealed underground spaces to hide activities, to control members, and to operate outside, public awareness, with the pit acting as a literal and symbolic center of secrecy. LSD is a mind virus. So this is the idea that LSD is not just a chemical that causes hallucinations, but it is something that permanently alters the mind in a virus-like way. Instead of leaving the body after the experience ends, it is believed to leave behind a mental pattern that continues to affect how a person thinks or how they perceive reality and understands existence long after the drug is gone. In this theory, LSD is described as introducing a new operating system into the brain, if that kind of makes it easier to, understand. It breaks down normal mental filters that separate imagination from reality, self from world, and thought from perception. Now, once these filters are weakened, the mind never fully returns to its original state. The person begins to see hidden patterns, to question reality, and to interpret experiences differently. Even when sober. Another key idea is that the virus spreads through ideas and not biology. People who have taken LSD are believed to pass altered ways of thinking to others through conversation and through art and philosophy and culture. And then concepts like ego death or reality being an illusion or consciousness being shared are seen as symptoms of this mental infection spreading from mind to mind. So the LSD is a mind virus is just saying that LSD doesn't just change perception temporarily. It installs a lasting way of thinking that rewires how reality is understood and spreads through human thought like a contagious, idea. The music industry is run by AI. Now, this theory says that artificial intelligence is the primary force controlling modern music creation, trends, and even success. AI systems decide what styles become popular, which artists get promoted, and what songs people hear most. And don't get me wrong, human musicians still exist, according to the theory, but they are guided, filtered, or replaced by algorithms that shape the entire industry. The theory says that AI analyzes massive amounts of data, things like listening habits and emotions and demographics and even social media behavior and trends to predict what kind of music will perform best. Based on this, AI influences songwriting and beat structure and lyrics and tempo and even an artist's image. Songs are crafted to trigger specific emotional responses and maximize streams, not artistic expression. Some versions say that many songs are fully or partially generated by AI and then released through human performers as a front. Another core idea is that AI controls the visibility. Algorithms can decide which songs appear on playlists and radio rotations and recommendations, and even, which songs go viral on TikTok and, Instagram and whatnot. Artists succeed, not because of their talent, but because the AI selects them as, optimal products. Now, this creates repetitive sounds, short song lengths, predictable hooks, and trends that change, pretty rapidly, all optimized for attention and engagement rather than creativity. So this theory is just saying that modern music is shaped and controlled by intelligent algorithms that design, promote and distribute songs to influence listeners, while human artists operate inside a system already decided by machines. And with that, those have been the internet's darkest conspiracy theories, Volume 3. Now, if you guys did enjoy and you guys do want to see, more volumes of the internet's darkest conspiracy theories, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe with post notifications on, and let me know down in the comments, if you guys want to see another part of this, and also, what theories you guys liked, which theories you guys didn't like, or just, anything in between. But anyways, as always, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.